Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DecisionWise Engaging People podcast. My name's Charles Rogel. I'm a senior consultant here at DecisionWise. Today, we are joined by Spencer Taylor.
Hi, everybody.
Spencer is also a consultant here at DecisionWise, and this is one of our consultant profile podcasts. So Spencer will be our victim for today. And today we just want to learn more about Spencer, his background, where he came from, what kind of tools and experience he brings to DecisionWise, and his focus. So you understand as you're working with him, his approach to engagement, leadership, and all other organization development items. So, Spencer, why don't we start off by just talking a little bit about your background, training, all that sort of fun stuff.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to go way back first, if that's all right. Can I go way back? So, 1987 or so, I'm sitting in my parents' workshop, and I've got a blender that no longer works. My mom has given me permission to do whatever I want with it. So I take it apart, and I'm trying to figure out how it works. And I plug it in and see if what I've done made any difference. And I unplug it and change some things, and I replug it. Go through this whole sequence. Well, one of the times I forgot to unplug it, and I stick the screwdriver in it, and I totally get zapped with whatever.
Knock you on the floor.
Volts. Yeah, I mean, it just fried my brain. And I like to think of that moment, as weird as it might sound, as kind of a turning point of shifting from an interest in how things work to how people work.
Okay.
I was only 8, so I mean, it probably wasn't that profound. But
right.
But as I look back, I really did. As I matured, I started to be more and more interested in just what makes people tick and wanting to engage with people and understand them and also understand myself. So that was kind of a foundational piece of what I've experienced since then. I had the chance in my fairly young years, at the tail end of my teenage years, to be a Christian missionary for a couple of years in Ohio. That also was a layer of that understanding, teaching something I believed in and could help people, and that was foundational as well. And I got to do some training and development work there. So right after that, early 20s, newly married, I worked in small business with my dad. He owned a marketing company. And I was immediately put into a management role, and it didn't take me long, less than 2 years, to figure out I really had no idea what I was doing, and I needed to go get some real experience. And I always just wanted to go see the world, those sorts of things as well. So I ended up joining the military. My original aspiration was to go FBI and be an agent and carry a gun around and kick doors in and those sorts of things. So I had this grand vision. The military intelligence made sense because it's one of the specialties that they look for.
Okay.
And so I joined that thinking I would get my degree, college degree, and then be highly qualified by the time I got done.
Yeah. So
I joined the Army really at the very beginning of the Iraq War, 2003.
That's a good time.
Yeah. Not the smartest as far as tactically placing myself in the military, but it was great. I mean, I immediately got sent to Iraq right out of training. I spent 11 months there in 2004. Then I did a 15-month stint, which was a long time. Wife and kids at home, and 15 months over in Iraq in 2006-07, and then my third one in 2009. So I spent a lot of time.
And what kind of roles were you in as you went out? I mean, just combat roles, or what else did you do?
Yeah, great question. So I was military intelligence was my specialty.
All right.
Again, because of the FBI connection.
Yeah.
At least in my mind. So I was an analyst, all-source analyst. So I was managing large sets of data, trying to figure out patterns of what's going to happen next on the battlefield, trying to assess threats and build packets on terrorists and try to find the money and those sorts of deals.
Yeah.
So a lot of data.
Wow.
For sure, which was interesting. And I had the chance to get promoted and move into some leadership roles in combat as well, and that was interesting. And again, I think that's an important layer as I think back, and even in the context of what we do here at DecisionWise, because so much of the influence or impact we're looking to have has to do with helping shape leaders and get them to take the right action. So I can look back at that. I had some great leaders in the military, and I had some that made life really tough, and it was challenging there. I also kind of naturally, it wasn't anything formal, part of my specialty, but I found that my commanders and leaders would just give me the soldiers that were having a tough time, the ones that were overly stressed about what's going on at home or stressed at the threat of being blown up any day or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a stressful environment. So I had the chance to mentor and kind of coach people. And again, that was good insight for me to gain just in looking at what I really wanted to do with my life, during that developmental phase, I would call it. So toward the tail end of military, I got invited during my 2006-07 deployment to travel from Iraq to Washington, D.C. to present to a bunch of different groups of leaders in the military, like senior Pentagon officials and people. And one of the leaders that was in one of the briefings was the commandant of the intelligence school. So after I presented, he came up and asked me to come and join the school once I was done with my current deployment that I was on. So that was also just such a blessing, because that allowed me to do that full time for my last couple of years of active duty, pass along the things that I had learned and work with lots of different groups of soldiers. And I also
So are you more in a training role then, or you're learning as well? What kind of education was it?
Sure, yeah, very much training.
Okay.
I mean, they have an an instructor school that they put you through, an Army instructor, so you get certified as an instructor, and then you go on the road. And we did groups of kind of users. It was a systems and a technology training, really, because it was a platform that the military had come up with to help manage the massive amounts of data and things that I kind of talked about. So teaching the other soldiers how to use it, but also working with groups of leaders to understand the capabilities of the system so they can make better decisions as they go forward. So again, I think there's some tie-in there with what we do here.
Totally, yeah.
A lot of data and making decisions based off of data and what the data is saying.
So how many years were you then active duty or in the military for?
About 8.
Okay.
So almost 8 years active, and then I did spend some time in the Guard as well after I left active duty. So, but I enjoyed active duty. I really did.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something about being part of a cause that big, of trying to help preserve freedom. Ironically, those who preserve freedom are often surrendering their freedom. Going over there, and you don't get to choose. You want to go home now, and it's too bad, and those sorts of things. So, but it was great. Some really good people.
Yeah.
So it was about this time, really, as I got this instructor assignment, I had the chance to interact with an FBI agent that lived close to where I was stationed down in southern Arizona. And he helped paint the real picture of what it's like. And I had also worked with some FBI, CIA in Iraq.
Sure.
And I just realized it was not the life I wanted. It was just kind of this moment of clarity.
What did they describe? What wasn't attractive about it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was the stress that it places on your family. You can't talk about anything you do, basically.
Yeah.
You could be sent anywhere at any time, and all that part, as far as like the be ready to go at any moment, I think was part of the appeal. But thinking about it as we had children, and
trying
realizing
to raise a family.
the impact that it would have on them, and also the bureaucracy and paperwork and some of the frustrations that you don't see on the movie, in the TV show or whatever. That's where the appeal comes from. So
interesting. Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
So that whole training and data and development analysis, all that was part of the decision process of what I would do when I left the military.
All right.
So I spent the next several years after the military working in training and development. I was a technical writer for the same system that I had trained on as a soldier. I did some instructional design work. And again, a lot of that was data-driven, doing user characterization events where we would bring in kind of like a focus group. You'd bring in groups of soldiers and civilians alike and understand what their frustrations are and try to put together recommendations on how to improve the system. So a lot of really interesting things there.
And did you have like a certain level of security clearance or whatever within the military?
Yeah, I would have to kill you if I. No.
You revealed.
I did have a top secret with SCI, which stands for Secret Compartmental Information or Compartmentalized Information. And there's caveats to that, like specific accesses that I had with. A lot of the security, a lot of people don't realize this, but security clearances are mostly about protecting sources.
Oh.
It's because if someone comes to us and says, my brother is a terrorist, and you reveal his identity, then all of a sudden our credibility is gone.
That's true.
So a lot of it is not like, I know who killed JFK or all that.
I got lots of questions for you now,
yeah. A lot of it's not the super cool gee whiz stuff. It's really just protecting sources.
Aliens, what do you know about aliens?
A few experiences there for sure, yeah.
All right, cool.
So I'm developing training, and again, I'm kind of, I think I was feeling a lot of urge to get back in front of people and to interact with people. And so I made the decision to shift more into a business and then eventually organizational development role. So I went to business school, got an MBA at Westminster here in Salt Lake, which is a great school. Also earned a Six Sigma black belt just because a lot of the work I started to do at that stage was related to quality. I actually bought a manufacturing company that was just kind of one of those crazy out of the blue things that fell in my lap. And so I bought this company, and I knew nothing about the industry. It was fish food.
Wow.
So making fish food, it was honestly a very terrible 2 years of.
I bet, yeah.
It was really hard, and it was extremely stressful because I inherited employees, and we had 56 distributors in 8 countries, and I mean, it was a pretty decent sized operation for a young
Are we talking
buck.
like tropical fish food or like farm raised fish food?
All kinds, but mostly the tank
Okay.
kind of, what do they call it? Just visual, you know, I guess, at-home type fish.
Sure. Okay.
We did some of the others as well. But anyway, yeah, so it was really great looking back. At the time, I'm sure I would not have used the word great to describe it, most of it. But what an education. I mean, I'm in the classroom learning how it should go, and then I'm going to my factory basically and seeing how it's really going and the gap between the two, and trying to start to fill that, and hiring the right people, and made a lot of mistakes, had a lot of failures. But it was kind of the combination of the traditional academic education and then the School of Hard Knocks, all married together in that 2-year period or so.
Wow.
So I had the chance to build up sales, which was good, but there was plenty of other stuff that was not so good. But building up the sales, learned a lot from that, I guess, as an element of business, but not the whole thing. Operations was such an important part. So anyway, I was able to sell out of that and move on to something else. And that's really where I began working with other organizations. And I'm so thankful to be able to continue to do that.
That's great. That's great.
Here.
And so, as you're working with other organizations, is it mainly in learning and development, organization development, what, or all of the above?
You know, it's funny because I think you'd classify it as organizational development, but I've found that there's always a learning component, meaning when an organization wants to change, they need data, they need justification for the change, they need to understand potential ROI. And to gain that understanding, I think is a process of starting with the senior level of leadership because you need buy-in, but then having the chance to really allow that to percolate into the lowest levels of the organization. Because if you don't get it down to the supervisor level, team leader level, nothing's really going to change.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing with the Army. I mean, if you have the officers, if the officers are the only ones who are read on to what's going on, then nothing is really going to happen because it's the sergeants that really make things happen in the military.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, kind of the same deal there. So yes, it was really more of a shift to organizational development, but there's always that continuous thread of training and communicating, and those are kind of the two biggest things that still I notice organizations tend to struggle with.
It's kind of the execution of the OD component.
Very much. So personally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my family because they're such a key part of who I am, what I'm about. I'm very blessed with my wife, Jamie. We've been married for 19 years. We have 6 kids ranging from ages 6 to 17. Our lives are very full and busy, but we call it happy chaos. It's almost always happy, and it's a very good life. We're blessed to live here in Utah. So as far as DecisionWise and the work we do here, which I love so much, I love walking clients through the process of data that we've talked about already, collecting the information. And I think my favorite part is really getting to the point where we identify what specific action or actions, and I use that term carefully because one of the tendencies is to try to do too much at once.
Yeah.
I think that's how all of us are, even personally. Sometimes I try to change too much about myself at once. So if we can choose the right action or 2 or 3 actions to take that are going to drive the core changes to the organization, that's going to really elevate everyone's experience as an employee and also the company as an organization. That's just so much fun to do that. So often that includes 360s. I love 360s. That's kind of where I began early in my time with DecisionWise, was working more with the 360s, and I believe in that. Yeah, very much getting that multi-rater experience where you rate yourself, and then you have your leader and your followers and your peers and others rate you, and then seeing the contrast between how others perceive you versus how you perceive yourself. Yeah. Getting to that individual level, I think is just essential. If we don't get to that, then I don't think real change can happen.
Agreed. So
hopefully it's clear, but I'm really a proud advocate of the brand and the work we're doing here at DecisionWise. I'm 100% on board with the whole concept of engagement because it changes lives.
Excellent. Well, Spencer, thank you very much for the overview, sharing your experiences, and for contributing here at DecisionWise. And everyone, we look forward to having you join us on a future podcast and learning more about leadership development and organization change. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Charles.